It must be great having the last name Devine. People say, oh, Ms. Devine. Yes, I am. Miranda Devine, how are you, my friend?
I'm well, thanks, Mark. How are you?
Very, very well. So the FBI, you wrote a terrific column, as you always do, and we always learn from them. What is going on at the FBI?
Well, look, we can see from the last several years how politicized they've been, but this group of former and serving agents have put together this incredible report about the diversity and equity and inclusion disaster that has befallen the FBI, pushed by the FBI Director Christopher Wray. And so whether it's recruits not being able to pass the physical fitness, who are 50 pounds overweight, who use drugs, who have financial irregularities, they're not paying their bills, mental health problems, integrity problems, you name it. These people are utterly incompetent and they're being pushed through, even though, supervisors and trainers and people at the academy and people in the FBI field offices, the senior people are complaining and trying to reject them. FBI headquarters is so insistent that they push through minorities and disabilities and all sorts of other, people based on race and gender and sexuality. They want to get their quotas up, so they don't care. All the standards, according to these guys and this report, which I have to say, I've spoken to several of the people and I know some of the people involved, and they are very senior people, counterintelligence, counterterrorism, former high-level FBI people, and they have talked to anonymous. Of course, everyone has to be anonymous because we've seen what's happened to former FBI whistleblowers who've just been crushed by the FBI. They've been retaliated against with impunity, stripped of their salaries, put on suspension without pay, not able to get other work. I mean, it is incredible the cruelty that's being inflicted under Christopher Wray. So that's why they're anonymous. But that doesn't devalue what they've written. I have seen it. They've written it in the form of an intelligence product. These are highly skilled FBI people, both serving and former.
It's truly unbelievable. And, we've reached a point in this country, Miranda Devine, that 90% of the media don't give a damn about any of this. So many of the American people don't know what's taking place in this country. This is a revolution. This is an effort to completely and fundamentally alter our kind of government, to destroy merit. And at the FBI and areas, does this explain in part, it certainly will going forward, the different priorities of the FBI, where they apply resources, who they're going to go after, who they're not going to go after? How could it not?
Oh, of course. And look, it dates before Christopher Wray. I'm told it goes right back to Mueller. And this sort of prioritization of Ivy League graduates straight out of college, bringing them in at a high level, and with all the biases that entails, and sort of social justice warriors, instead of what they used to have, which was, ex-military, ex-law enforcement, people with practical skills and a kind of a moral compass. And they left their politics at the door. And now you have these kind of rampant radicals who are in positions, especially in the analyst section, positions of great influence. That's how we got that ridiculous product about Catholics, traditional Catholics being domestic terrorists. These high-level former people that I speak to say that never would have gotten past, even if it ever happened, it never would have got past all the layers of scrutiny and supervision to become a real product. And yet that if it hadn't been leaked by one of these whistleblowers, that probably would have been put into place. And now Wray is asked about it in Congress, and he says, oh, it's terrible, blah, blah. But it's only terrible because they got caught. How many other intelligence products are being produced that are actually acted on? And we can only guess, but we can see some of the outcomes with SWAT teams, descending on Mark Houck, for instance, who was a Catholic father of 6 or 7, or Christian anyway. I don't know if he was Catholic, but he was an anti-abortion activist. He used to go and pray outside abortion clinics. Ridiculous at a time when you had real threats to Supreme Court justices with, would-be assassin trying to get into Justice Kavanaugh's house or getting into it, very close. You had protesters outside those justices' homes drumming drums all hours and causing mayhem with their neighbours. All of that was happening, that air of menace, and that, nothing was done about that. And yet, and we had, pro-life centres being firebombed, and yet who were they going after? These sort of peaceful anti-abortion protesters.
Yeah, and I'm sure this is so discouraging to so many Americans. We used to watch the FBI. Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. was a great show, and we all looked up to the FBI, and everybody wanted to work for the FBI if they were interested in law enforcement. They had these very, very tough standards and dress codes and all the rest of it. And now look at it. Yeah. And it also, I think, has a lot to do with them going after Trump, the way they go after Trump. There was a battle in there on whether to use a SWAT team or not. And obviously, the more radical among them insisted on a SWAT team, Miranda, over documents at Mar-a-Lago, the former president's house. For God's sakes.
Exactly. I mean, this is what these FBI people tell me. They say things were bad, but something broke during the Trump era. People who, they describe working alongside other agents who they knew were liberal, but it didn't really matter until the Trump era. And then everyone just decided to act on, or the left decided to act on their politics, and they subverted that. I think it's the same across a lot of institutions, across the media and so on, that people got into their head, they were propagandized that Trump was an existential threat to this country. So even good people decided that they were being patriotic and honourable by subverting Trump and acting as part of the resistance. I think you look at those 51 former intelligence officials. I've spent quite a lot of time looking at them, and it has always puzzled me. I mean, some of them, a lot of them, were patriots, did do service for their country, did put their life on the line to try and keep this country safe. And yet, they turned into enemies of this country when they signed that letter. And it was because there was this PSYOP, this very sophisticated PSYOP that had been put into place to demonize Donald Trump and to poison people, important people, influential people against him, especially in Washington, D.C. People became insane, and they're still insane. I mean, people who are dead against what Biden's done with the border, with the economy, they can see the destruction. Their own lives have been damaged. And yet they will still vote for Biden. I'm being told just today. Someone said they'd still vote for Biden over Trump. It's just insane.
You see it happening some of these federal judges, same thing. Same thing. Oh. It's to me, it's absolutely... It's contemptible because they're destroying the criminal justice system. And, you gotta pray that the criminal justice system at least will be the last thing standing, and it won't be used by one party or the state against another party. And that's not what's happening. In other words, that kind of mentality that you talk about, it's obviously spreading through. I want to ask you quickly about this guy, Christopher Wray. I think I'm a pretty good judge of character, not perfect. I watch this guy testify. I watch his body English. I watch the way he speaks. He is a complete bureaucratic disaster. A bureaucratic disaster. He could clean up that place. He won't clean up that place. He gets there he plays rope-a-dope in front of these committees. You get no real information out of this guy. You've been covering this very, very carefully. How wrong am I, or am I right about this?
Oh, no, you're right. He's a lawyer. He's a pretty boy. He busies himself flying around the country on the FBI jet and taking it for his own personal use to go on weekends away. But he also just visits all the FBI field offices and gives them pretty speeches and doesn't really get his hands dirty. He has plausible deniability. He doesn't want to know what's going on below him, except that he puts in place directives like about diversity, equity, inclusion. He's just a very vain man, and he wants to satisfy, he wants to sort of be thought of well by the good burgers in Washington and in Buckhead where he lives and flies back on weekends in the FBI jet. And he just wants to be, liked in his peer group. And so that's what he does. And he allows his deputy to enforce these ridiculous sort of DEI directives and also to retaliate against these FBI whistleblowers in the cruelest ways. And he knows it's going on. He allows it to go on. And then he goes into Congress, and he's a lawyer. So he skirts very close to lies without technically lying. I mean, he was caught out one time last year when Chuck Grassley asked him specifically, are you leaving early? Like, I'm surprised. We had this time set out and you're telling me you have to leave early. Do you have business? And it was caught on a hot mic where Christopher Wray says to him, yes, I have business. But he didn't have business because I looked at where the FBI jet went that afternoon, and it went to his holiday home in the Adirondacks.
Unbelievable.
So that's what he was doing. So he sort of gets away with not quite lying, but I'm sure he does lie if he thinks that he can get away with it. And the problem with the FBI and this DEI, this sort of devaluing of competence and putting complete incompetence. I mean, people who are disabled, people who have mental health issues, people who are illiterate, who are grossly obese, who are stupid, who just are incapable of doing the things that an FBI agent has to do, are being put in place. Over the years, it's just going to degrade the ability of the FBI to do anything, and it costs a huge amount of money to the American taxpayer. I'm
going to have to roll, but they're doing the same thing to the United States military, and it's all volunteer, and they can't meet their numbers. They're destroying every one of these institutions that we have always admired. I want to thank you so much, Miranda. You're terrific, and we're definitely going to want to have you back. Keep up the great work. God bless you, my friend.
Thanks so much, Mark. Good to talk.
All right. You take care of yourself.